Welcome to the Jon Harrison Podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or in the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Jon Harrison Podcast. This is Madeline, and I have Jon and Melissa and Jason here with me today. We're going to be talking about navigating the days with a coworker or a subordinate after you've had a difficult conversation with them. We know this can kind of be awkward because maybe you've had the difficult conversation. Maybe you thought it went really well, but then there's some awkwardness that's still there in the days afterwards. And so we're just going to talk about that and get it on the table and maybe give a little bit of advice and perspectives from our angles. So Jon, I'll jump to you.
Yeah, thanks, Madeline. And clearly, if you've been listening to podcasts or been to our sessions or anything in the Jon Harrison community, you know we talk about getting awkward early, having these difficult conversations. But that doesn't mean, as Madeline just said, that's always going to go perfectly. Now, we do know when you avoid having these conversations, it does not go well. So we're sure of that. But let's say with a peer, with your boss, with your teenager, you've done, in our opinion, the right thing. You've brought it up early, and now you might notice the person is being a little passive aggressive. Maybe they're not the same around you. They avoid you. So that could be happening. So we want to get to that. But Melissa, give us what we just talked about this a minute ago. So as you're ending a difficult conversation with spouse, teenager, or employee, what's your advice on how to end that before? So maybe try to nip this in the bud before it becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah, I've had people in my office after conversations that have experienced all kinds of emotions. Sometimes I'm handing them tissues and Kleenex. Sometimes they're so mad they cannot even speak. They can't look at me, or they just completely disagree altogether with what was just talked about. So, I've even suggested, why don't you take a break for a minute and come back and let's kind of wrap up, that first and foremost is probably one of the best things I learned to do early, because the emotion is so thick in the room, regardless of what the emotion is. But after they come back, I will say, something to the effect of, I know the conversation we just had was probably really difficult for you and was awkward in some ways, perhaps. But what I want you to understand is that we had the conversation when we did for a very specific reason, and it is so we can get past it and move forward. And I don't want you to come back tomorrow wondering, am I still in trouble, or is this going to get worse, or am I going to hear about this again, or any of those things. I want you to come back tomorrow and realize that it's a new day for you, and you get to start over, and the awkwardness is now behind both of us, and let's just move forward. I don't want it to be awkward, and I don't want you to I don't want it to be awkward for you. So, and the other thing I try to do too is assure them, especially in a work environment, that the conversation was confidential. Because a lot of people worry, are you going to go out of here and tell my peers, or are you going to tell the rest of the team that this conversation happened? And I absolutely do not. That is a big no-no for many reasons, but that it's super important that they have trust in you in terms of that conversation, and that you're holding it close to the vest, but that you're sharing it with them and them only.
That's really good. And I think even peer to peer or in a marriage, one thing that Jen and I try to say, and she's helped me with this for sure, is we want to be better on the other side of this.
Yes.
Like starting almost like that. Like, this is going to be a little awkward, a little difficult, but the intention is
That's right.
that we're going to be better on the other side. And I think just starting like that when you have the difficult conversation. But now, kind of what I said, that was great advice, Melissa. But now, Jason, it could be with a teenager, Madeline with a peer or spouses. So now you're noticing like the person is kind of being awkward and they're not speaking or they're avoiding you. What do you do then?
One thing I definitely try to do is to not act different, right? So if even if I feel awkward, I feel their awkwardness maybe, because you can tell somebody, well, we're past it, but they may still feel awkward, like, well, he got on to me or she got on to me. So one thing I try to do is act exactly the same. I'm the same person tomorrow that I was today and yesterday. And just let them know that in that, I think it's letting them know, okay, he's okay with me, he's not treating me different. He's not avoiding me. And then the next day, if it goes on for 2 days, I do the same thing. But eventually, now if it's been 3 days, 4 days, 5 days a week, maybe I have to revisit that and say, hey, I'm just checking in, just want to make sure you're okay, because if I don't and I just let that fester for a long time, then it could affect the work relationship, and that would be no good. Back on the confidentiality thing that you said, Melissa, like this is going to be confidential. In our marriage, one thing that we made clear at the beginning, we agreed with one another, is when we got in an argument or fight, we weren't going to tell our parents. Because here's what happens. You tell your parents, well, Jason did this, or I tell my parents, well, Nicole did this. They're going to take up your side, right? They're going to get mad at the person. You and your spouse are going to make up in the next hour, could be.
Yes.
But guess what? Your parents are still mad at that other person. Could be for days or a week. Or they have that in their recollection. Well, that's the third time they've done that. So that's one big thing I think in marriages we can do is keep that confidentiality.
That's huge.
That's
yeah.
awesome. And I think it can be in the workplace too, because let's say Melissa's my boss and she gives me we have a difficult conversation about my attitude or performance, and now I go to lunch and I go, hey everybody, look, guess what happened to me today?
Right.
I was just doing so-and-so and Melissa got on to me, and I go, and you know what quote friends are going to do. Man, that's really, but I can't believe she said that to you. Like,
yeah.
And now I get allies right away. And men and women do this at work about the argument.
Yeah.
Hey, man, what's the matter with you, Jason? Nicole was on me last night.
Yes.
And the guys go, man, that's not fair.
Yeah, right.
And so I think it's really good to not, at work, marriage, not bring other people in.
Yes.
Too early. And because amazingly, they'll kind of be on your side, the way you tell the story.
Yeah, we use upward feedback surveys, right? Like in leadership situations. And that is like a very, I will say, kosher, professional, and kind way to get feedback about your leadership style. And it's not out of the ordinary. It's not saying or admitting or raising your hand to say, I have a problem in this area or that area. It's just simply, I want your feedback. I may have some blind spots and I need to understand better where I can improve overall as a leader. But what I always found interesting is in situations where that's not in play, right? And you'd have a difficult conversation and the person is worried about the confidentiality of it, but then they are the ones that go out and talk about it.
Right,
And I'm like, wait a second, I thought this was, this was important to you. And so anyway, just keep in mind that, as an employee, regardless of whether you're sitting in a supervisor seat or not, is you have control to some degree of what gets out there and how it's addressed and how it's presented and how it's received and perceived. So I don't know. It was just comical to me when those situations would happen. And I'm like going, what just happened?
Yes. You wanted this, but you didn't do it on your side.
Yeah.
Madeline, you talked about even kind of a marriage situation, but just give us your thoughts on this.
Yes, I was thinking before we started recording about just situations I've had in my marriage, and it applies to work, just the same, but where, Mark and I might have been in a disagreement about something, and then I am very emotional about it, and I can tell that he usually responds by getting pretty quiet, and we'll talk through things, but then he's just kind of quiet and he's in a mood, and that's totally fine. I do the same thing, but I will just get emotional, and I'll see that, and I'll want him to talk to me or to talk through it more, because I feel like since I feel that awkwardness, I feel like it's unresolved, and I'm like, I need to keep pushing and pushing, and that's not a good thing to do. So I have learned not to do that. I'm much better at it now, but that was definitely a struggle from the beginning of our marriage, where we had to figure out, like, space is good, and work the same thing. Don't let it, if the awkwardness is still there, like, yes, a week later or longer, like, you should be checking in and stay consistent with your behavior, like Jason said, but give that space, because they probably do need to process that, that was a difficult conversation and they did get either in trouble or whatever it was about. That is kind of hard as an employee or as a coworker, just to process that.
Yeah, I love that, and I think this is advice home at work, but I think sometimes we have the conversation and then people go, so we're good, right? Everything's good? Like you just want to everything.
Like you're like, ah.
And I would say, I need you to just think about it.
Yeah.
We'll talk tomorrow.
Yes.
And sometimes it's nice to have difficult conversations at work on a Friday, not firing conversations. Which
Right.
But
Right.
I'm just talking about let them have the weekend, because they've got a couple days to process it. They might talk to whoever they live with and go, man, my boss said this, and they get a different perspective. So I just think sometimes we want these over with. So we're like, everything's good, right? Like let's go back to normal. And it's like, no, we need a little time.
You should be thinking of the other person.
That's
I
right.
mean, because whenever you're saying that, that's kind of not as selfish, but you know what I mean.
It is a little bit.
You're thinking of yourself and like, okay, I want the pit in my stomach to go away, and I want this awkwardness to go away from me. And you're not necessarily, maybe you are, but you're not always thinking about the other person, and that they may need to process. Yeah.
John, I want to say, if you're the person that's being spoken to, right? If you're the employee and you need to change some things, I think one of the major things is after you do think about it, cool off and everything, is if you need to apologize, don't be afraid. Go back and say, hey, I see where I messed up, and maybe you have to apologize. And that takes some humbleness and some awareness, like, okay, I'm not perfect, right? None of us are perfect. So I think that's a major thing too, is go back to the person.
It is, and all marriages have seen this happen, or at work, but people go, I'm sorry you took it that way.
Right.
Which is not really sorry.
Right.
It's kind of like, I did nothing wrong. You're obviously too sensitive, or you heard the wrong thing. Instead of, I understand why people think that and say that, but just to say, I know that hurt your feelings, I know whatever. And I think that just even how you apologize sometimes, or that employee coming back to work on Monday going, I thought about it. I was frustrated when you told me this on Friday, but I can understand why that caused an issue. Or
right.
And I think, man, that is such a mature response.
Yeah, something I have learned recently from my kids, actually my daughter, and I don't even know how this came about in conversation, but just being able to ask the other person in a difficult conversation, not in the thick of it, but like the next day, coming back the next day, and after you've reflected on it, say or ask, did I say anything yesterday that I should apologize for today? Do you feel like I said anything I should apologize
Out of turn,
for?
or
Yeah.
That's good.
And I was like, wow, that's an awesome question.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a mature response. So.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that y'all found this episode beneficial. And again, if you want to submit topics to us, you can do that on our website. I'll have it linked down below in the description. But thank you again for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us today on the Jon Harrison Podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.